Alrighty, guys, we got Emmy nominated, top 10 Billboard charting. This dude is a composer, producer, and multi-instrumentalist. Robert McClung with us. Woo! An honor to have this man right here.
Welcome, friend.
Woohoo! Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I hope I live up to that introduction.
Oh, you do. And you know what? You are, I mean, I've said it before, dude, and I'm dead serious. You are a musical genius, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart, man.
Oh, well, you know, tell that to my wife.
Well.
Yeah. I listen to a lot of your work.
When it's time to do the dishes, my wife really doesn't care that I'm a genius.
I hear you, brother. I hear you. I got you.
Isn't it the truth?
I got you, man. Well, I see, dude, you're rocking your shirt right there, brother. I mean, I'm serious.
I figured I had to represent and put the colors, Yeah.
I love it, brother. I love it, man. And dude, all right. You got so many varieties of styles of music. Tell us your influences, man.
Well, my biggest influences would be a lot of the progressive rock and metal acts of the 80s and 90s. We're talking, Queensryche and Dream Theater. Probably one of my biggest overall influences would be Savatage and Trans-Siberian Orchestra. What Paul O'Neill did, kind of taking Savatage into Trans-Siberian Orchestra, was a massive, massive influence on me. And that should come as no surprise, considering a multitude of people involved with Trans-Siberian Orchestra are involved with Telergy. And that comes from that influence. Clearly, they are people who think very much the way I do and have very much the same vision. So I know that I can reach out to them and get exactly the product and the fit that I'm looking for. I have other influence as well, particularly in the classical world. I listen to a lot of the great classical composers, Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, all of those were pretty huge influence as well. I think one of the things that makes my musical upbringing unique was that I spent a lot of time in musical theater during my teens. So during that time when I was sort of honing my craft as a musician per se, as a teenager, I was knee deep in the world of musical theater, and I was learning a lot of Andrew Lloyd Webber and stuff like that. And one of my biggest mentors, who kind of took me under his wing when I was a teenager, was a gentleman named Roy Rogeson, who was the conductor and arranger for Johnny Mathis.
Oh, wow.
And so, he had a certain perspective on music and how to arrange things. And he was a gigantic influence on my direction. Clearly he has no connection to heavy metal, but as a teenager, I was, completely immersed in Metallica and Megadeth and all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And I wanted a way to blend those two. How could I blend my theatrical music and classical music influences with my heavy metal influences? And that's kind of where Savatage and Trans-Siberian Orchestra come along, because they were the ones that showed me that this is possible.
Right.
That you can combine theatrical music and classical music with heavy metal.
Right.
And when I heard them doing that, I was like, oh, that's what I hear in my head.
You're right, right.
And so, that's kind of how I became a huge devotee of that. And really any music at all, any rock music that worked with themes and concepts. So, when you talk about like Operation Mindcrime by Queensryche, or The Wall by Pink Floyd, or Tommy from The Who, or any sort of concept record where there was a story involved, that was a huge influence on me. A lot of the music that, at least at the time period in the 80s, was just about, partying and drinking and, kind of nonsense kind of garbage, didn't really connect with me. But as soon as you gave it a story and characters, then it mattered to me. Then I was like, oh, that's interesting. I want to hear more of that. And then later, I want to do more. I want to create that,
Right.
So, that's where my musical background kind of got formed around all of those things swirling together. My youngest musical influences was really the classic rock of the 70s that my parents were listening to.
Right.
I grew up on basically my parents' record collection in the 70s. So I was listening to lots of Pink Floyd, Fleetwood Mac, Lynyrd Skynyrd, Aerosmith, stuff like that. And when I started learning how to play music, starting around 10 years old, those are the first things that I started learning. Probably one of the very first things I ever learned on guitar was probably a Pink Floyd or an Aerosmith guitar riff.
Right.
And then it just progressed from there. My grandfather was a musician, and he actually gave me my first guitar when I was around 10 years old. And my grandfather was a country musician, and he was very much involved in the country and early rock and roll scene in the 1950s. And he actually got to tour and perform with a lot of those artists from that era. So people like Chuck Berry and Fats Domino and Johnny Cash. He was very close with all of those guys. So,
nice.
There was certainly an influence there as well that kind of seeped its way into some of what I do in little bits and pieces.
That is so cool, man. That is really cool, man. And speaking of classic rock, we've talked before, man. I mean, you and I are huge Kansas fans, man.
Well, I discovered Kansas in my teens, and one of the things that really just knocked me out about Kansas was their incorporation of violin.
Right.
In a rock band setting. And, in my early days, I was just all about rock guitar,
Yeah.
And then when I got to be about 17 years older, so I started kind of being drawn towards violin. And I was in a weird spot because I was like, well, is this something that I could use in a rock context? And then all of a sudden, I kind of stumbled upon Kansas and went, oh, look, they're using a violin. And so, I became a massive fan. And not just because of the violin, also their arrangement are incredibly intricate. Listen to a song like Song for America.
Right.
Or a song like Cheyenne Anthem.
Right.
The arrangements are so intricate and so grandiose. And, Kerry Livgren was just a stunning arranger and writer. And one of the things that, I feel very blessed with is I have become close with some of those guys in Kansas. And I call them friends now.
Wow.
I was actually just on the phone. I was just on the phone with David Ragsdale about 3 days ago, and we had a great long conversation. And,
violinist, yeah.
And it's really amazing when the people that you look up to and that you idolized as a teenager are now people that you can pick up the phone and call and be like, hey dude, what's up?
Yeah. That is nuts, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's ridiculous, because I went from being just I went from being a fanboy,
Yeah.
just somebody who worshipped and idolized all these different musicians from all these different bands, and somehow I kind of crossed that line from just being a fanboy to being like buddies with these people, which is just an incredible blessing. And I feel so honored and blessed to have that connection, to my idols, to have that, have that closeness with them. Yeah, it's been a really special experience. And the violin that's sitting here to my left, is I will totally blame Rags for it. It's Rags's fault. I told him that. I bought this because of him, and so there's a few $1,000s out of my pocket, and it's all his fault.
I hear you. And you know what? You had mentioned David, man. Look, I mean, from the DVDs and everything and all of that, he seems like, just going by his I mean, you know him, but the mannerisms of it, he seems like such a nice guy. He's always smiling, Yeah.
Oh, he is Dave. Rags is an absolute sweetheart, and his girlfriend is wonderful, and they're just great people. And I got to really say, not just Rags, but the entire band are just down to earth, good people, Rich Williams, and Billy Greer. You will not meet nicer guys in your life. They are just absolute wonderful people. And, I got to tell you, it just makes my heart jump for joy when, I go backstage after a Kansas concert and Rich just walks up to me and goes, "Hey, Robert, how you doing?"
Wow! Wow!
I mean, that to this day, that just blows my mind.
Yeah.
And this is a guy who I was listening to when I was like 16, 17 years old and completely idolizing, and now he's just he knows my name, and I think that's just the coolest thing ever. Those guys are just the nicest, sweetest people you would ever want to meet, and not just the band, but their crew and their families, who some of them travel with them. They are all just really wonderful people who I'm blessed to know.
Wow, that's so awesome.
And I wanted to say, like I just recently heard your music, and I was really, really impressed with it. And it's something, you've done something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. You tell a story with your music. And I'm just saying, you've really inspired me. And I want to do this now.
Thank you.
I want to tell you that, and two, I noticed too that when I was listening through it, especially Goody Cole, I seen all the people that you worked with, on your website. And I remember, like, in particular, you had a saxophone part in that album.
Yep.
I thought, you know what? That kind of sounds like Pink Floyd to me.
Because it's the saxophonist from Pink Floyd.
I know.
Boom!
Yeah, that was me. And I'm like, what was cool, though, is not only did you get the guy from Pink Floyd and all these other people from all these bands, but you actually made them sound recognizable, in the production. And I just think that's amazing. You did that.
I gotta tell you, when I had a hard time chasing down Scott Page is who we're talking about here, the sax player for Pink Floyd. I had a hard time chasing him down because he's not, a guy who's easily accessible. And I ended up like finding the name of somebody else that he had worked with at some point. And I said, well, maybe this person knows can connect me. And I remember contacting that person via email and explained my situation. And that person got back to me and said, well, I'll reach out to him and give him your number. And if he wants to work with you, he'll let you know. And I remember I was in a little cafe about to order lunch, and my cell phone goes off, and I picked up the line. And I was like, hello. And he's,
wow.
And he was like, yeah, this is Scott Page. And I was like,
wow.
Ah! Yeah, and I remember like running out of the cafe so that I could like clearly talk to him on the phone, so that I could stand outside and have a conversation with him. And another great guy. All the people involved with Pink Floyd that I've worked with, Scott Page and Durga and Lorelei McBroom, the backup singers from Pink Floyd. They are just super, super sweet, nice people. My wife and I actually met online in a Pink Floyd chat page.
Wow.
Oh,
and
cool.
I remember I told her when we were first talking online that I worked with members of Pink Floyd. And I can only imagine what went on in her head when I told her that. I'm sure in the back of her mind, she was like, yeah, right, buddy. Yeah, sure. Yeah. And so she's from overseas, and it took quite a long time to get her here. That's another story unto itself. But when she got here, a few months after she got here, I actually had a recording session with Lorelei in a studio in Boston, and I brought my wife with me, and and she got to meet Lorelei and hang out with her in the recording studio, and it was kind of like I was able to look at my wife and be like, yeah, see, I told you. See,
exactly.
Really? Yeah.
See, yep.
But yeah, Lorelei is a phenomenal woman. She makes great jewelry.
Okay.
And I have bought many pieces of her jewelry for my wife, so my wife is very excited. We can go to a concert and wear a piece of Lorelei's jewelry. And yeah,
cool.
And I gotta say, as much as I'm giving kudos to Lorelei, I also have to acknowledge the other great singers from the Australian Pink Floyd show.
Nice.
That I've worked with. They're just fantastic ladies, and they did a terrific job on the record.
Nice. That is so cool, man. Like, wow, that's wow.
And if you want to hear a great story about recording with them, I was talking with Lorelei about trying to arrange a session time. Now, the other ladies live in England, and Lorelei lives in New York, and trying to arrange a time to record was challenging. And it turns out, they were on tour, and they were playing at a venue in Boston. I live about 45 minutes north of Boston. And so we decided that, all right, we'll do the recording session on the one day that you're in Boston. So I booked a studio that was about a mile and a half from the venue where they were playing. They were playing it at a theater in Boston. So I actually drove down and picked them up off their tour bus and drove them over to the recording studio, and we did the session in probably less than 2 hours, and then I had to zip them back to the venue so they could get back in time for sound check.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, that was
so cool.
Yeah, it was kind of like a whirlwind kind of thing. It was like, grab these ladies, get them over to the studio, stick them in front of a mic, get them back to the venue.
Wow.
Yeah, it was all very, kind of a flourish of activity, but they did an amazing job. As you can hear on the album, they did those. I was looking for that sort of gospel choir thing, and they pulled it off perfectly to a T. And it's different every musician you work with. Some take a very, very long time to get what you need. You need to kind of, coax them and work with them to try to get what you have to have.
Mhm.
Lorelei was the exact opposite. We got her in the vocal booth, and she literally did one take, and
Wow.
she looked at me through the glass of the vocal booth, and she went, "Was that okay?" And I pressed the talk back button on the mixing console, and I looked at my watch, and I was like, "Well, that's done. We have an hour and a half. What do you want to do now?"
Nice. Nice.
Wow.
Yeah, they were so professional and so talented, and they pulled it off like so quickly. It was a joy to work with them, because some other people, it takes a longer time to get them in tune with what I'm trying to accomplish. Sometimes you have sessions that can last several hours, even for only a few seconds of playing. I've had situations where it's taken me 5 or 6 hours to get 40 seconds worth of usable material.
I
Right.
understand.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were kind of the polar opposite of that. They were the utmost professionals, nailed it on the first go around. It was beautiful.
Wow, man, that is awesome. I gotta say, dude, we've talked. Rumors is my favorite of yours.
Thank
And dude, I remember you saying to me, man, with what the White Snake, dude. You know what I'm saying? Ripping that solo like that. Oh man, I love it.
I wish I could play half as good as Joel Hoekstra. Joel Hoekstra is a absolutely mind-bendingly good guitar player, and it was a joy to work with him. And he's another one of those like incredibly nice guys. And to tell you how nice it was, how nice of a guy he is, I went to a Whitesnake concert, and I brought one of my students with me who was about 14 at the time, a young boy. And it was like his first big rock concert, And I told Joel that, I was coming to the concert, that I was bringing this student with me. And he hooked me up with backstage passes. And, after the show, we got to go backstage. There was an after party, and the whole band was there. And, every member of the band took time to hang out with my student and give him words of encouragement. And, Joel was so supportive and kind of talked guitar shop with him for a little bit and gave him a lot of encouragement. And, that's a really fantastic thing. I mean, for him to take this kid that he doesn't know and, give him encouragement and nurture him and give him inspiration to go forward and make his own music is really fantastic. Joel's a great guy, really wonderful guy.
That is so cool, man. Like, for real, dude. Wow.
Well, we definitely know all the people you worked with were great people. But tell us about you. Like, what kind of instruments do you play and stuff like that?
Well, I consider myself, I play a lot of different instruments, but I wouldn't consider myself like a master at any of them. I'm a reasonably decent guitar player. I'd say I'm above average in the guitar world.
Yeah, he's above
but
Humble man.
when after that, I'm a violinist. I've been playing violin for many years. Pretty much anything that has strings on it after that, you think like, bass and dulcimer and balalaika and, viola and harp or whatever. To me, stringed instruments are basically all the same concept. It's all based on Pythagorean theorem. You take a string, you stretch it at 2 points, you interrupt the string at different intervals, it makes different notes. Now, the tuning of the strings might be different, and the size of the instrument and the strings might be different, and whether you pluck it or bow it might be different. But that basic theorem is is really applicable to any stringed instrument. So you could throw me pretty much anything with strings on it, and I'll figure it out pretty quick.
Right. Exactly, man.
You know, I play piano some. I absolutely would never, ever consider myself a pianist. I can sit down at a piano and make it sound pleasant, but that doesn't mean I'm a pianist. Same thing with flute. You know, I can pick up a flute and make it sound nice, but I'm not a flutist.
I got you.
So when it comes to like the piano and the flute, I'll play like the background parts. But if I need a flute solo, I'm gonna get somebody like McClung to do it.
I got you. I hear you, brother.
and as far as, you know, my soloing on guitar, I played all the lead guitar on the first Telergy album. I played most of the lead guitar on the second one, with the exception of Joel and Ty Tabor from King's X. They did a couple of solos. About the third album, I just pulled back from playing too many leads, only because I had too many other things to worry about. You know, I was worrying about the production, and I was worrying about the arrangements, and I had so much on my plate that I just said, you know, I am surrounded by all these astounding guitar players. I don't need to make this, you know, the Rob McClung show-off show. Let's just let them do what they do, and I'll worry about the things I need to worry about. So you know, for Hypatia, I didn't play any lead, maybe one, and then this past album for Black Swallow, I do 2 violin leads, but I don't do any guitar leads. I play a couple of violin solos on the album, but no guitar solos, because again, Telergy was never meant to be about me showing off or me trying to show everybody what a great musician I am as a guitar player or a violinist or whatever. It was supposed to be about something much bigger and about much more. And I realized as I'm working my way through the project that my role isn't necessarily as a player. My role is as a composer and a producer and an arranger. That's where my job lies first and foremost. And so, you know, that's where my focus has been. There's several songs on all of the Telergy albums where I'm not playing at all.
Gotcha.
Right.
And if you listen through some of the Telergy albums, there's certain pieces of music where I didn't play a note because it's not about me as a player. You know, on Hypatia, there's an incredible cello solo, or not a cello solo, a cello duet. Sorry. There's a cello duet that, you know, I wrote the piece, but I'm not playing it. I got 2 kick-ass cellists to play it. You know, and there's a gorgeous piano solo on the latest album that was played by Rachel Flowers. And again, I wrote the song, I wrote the piece of music, but I realized that, you know, my piano skills weren't going to do the piece of music justice. I needed to put it in the hands of a real pianist. So, you know, I wrote the piece of music and I gave it to Rachel, and she, of course, knocked it out of the park.
Gotcha.
You know, Telergy is about something much bigger than me.
Right.
You know, if it were supposed to be about me, it wouldn't be called Telergy. It would be called the Rob McClung Show. And
I got you.
It's not, for a reason.
I got you. Man, I'll tell you what, man. All right, so also, man, we've talked. You're a Blind Guardian fan as myself. I love Blind Guardian. That's my favorite band, man.
They're great. They're amazing. I got to see them with Queensryche and Dream Theater.
Awesome.
That was a great show. It was Blind Guardian, Queensryche, and Dream Theater, and it was a prog fest, man. That was a great show.
Heck yeah! Oh yeah! Now, all right, well, dude, what's your favorite Blind Guardian album, man? If you had to choose, or close to one.
I can't choose. Sorry.
They're all good.
They're all good. There's not a bad one in the bunch. You can throw any of them on, you know, and they'll all be great.
Yeah.
You know, and Blind Guardian exists in that category of bands that I don't believe ever got the level of attention they deserved. Another great band kind of in that same category would be Shadow Gallery. Yeah, just an unbelievable band and just astonishingly good stuff. Another one would be King's X. You know, King's X kind of never crossed that line that they deserve to cross for being just gigantically popular. But, you know, for me, King's X is just an astounding band that just did so much great stuff. And they never could cross that threshold of you know, big popularity. You know, I mean, we went to see them, you know, just a year and a half or so ago, and they were playing at a bar near my house that literally held maybe 200 people if you packed it. And I just stood there watching these insanely good musicians, and I said, it's a crime that these guys aren't playing in an arena somewhere. You know, and bands like Shadow Gallery and Blind Guardian, you know, for me are kind of are in the same category. It's like they deserve far more attention than they ever got.
I hear you, brother. Yeah, I saw them in 2006. Oh man, yeah.
And I really felt that way about you too. I mean, like, I was listening last night, and I'm like, why have I not heard this band before? You know, like, why isn't everybody talking about them, you know?
Well, you know, I think the one thing that makes what I do difficult, well, there's many things. There isn't one thing. There's many things. There's many things that make what I do hard to access for most average listeners, you know? Right. Most average listeners, they're looking for a song. And everything that you're trying to translate has to come through in, you know, 3 or 4 minutes. And my music doesn't work that way. If you take one song off any of my albums and listen to it, yeah, okay, you might like it, but you're not going to get the big picture. You're not going to get the overall concept. And when you tell people right up front, out of the gate, this is a concept record and it won't make any sense if you don't listen to it from the beginning to the end, they'll look at you like you have 8 heads and just walk away. You know, I mean, I've had so many people that I've had conversations with who, you know, you try to explain what Telergy is or you know, how it works. And they just look at you with this strange look like, what? and they don't get it. They don't understand it. And you know, there's just some people that you can't cut through with that. You know, the other thing that makes Telergy hard to access for a lot of people is the randomness of the influences, because in the course of trying to tell the story correctly, and Telergy all comes down to telling the story. And one of the things that makes it hard for some people is those stories can include lots of different musical influences. You know, most people are used to putting on a rock record or a metal record or a blues record or a jazz record or a country record or a classical record, and they're expecting to hear that kind of music. Well, on a Telergy album, you'll hear all of those things.
Correct.
You know, and that is hard for some people to grasp. You know, some people it's like, you know, no, I just want to listen to metal today. I don't want to hear, you know, 6 minutes of symphony orchestra, or I don't want to hear a big band jazz piece. Well, then maybe you shouldn't be listening to Telergy.
Exactly.
And another thing that makes it hard to kind of spread the word and get the name out, and this is one of the biggest questions that I get asked a lot, is, why doesn't Telergy tour? Do you realize how expensive it would be to get that many musicians? Even if I didn't have the famous people that I work with involved, even if I just got regular people, people who don't have notoriety, even if I went out and got regular people, I would need dozens and dozens of people.
Oh, it'd be ridiculous. Yeah.
And the cost involved in getting those people from one place to another is astronomical.
Right.
So, when people are like, well, why don't you go on tour with Telergy? It's like, well, why don't you hand me a few $1 million and I'll pull it off?
Exactly.
I got you.
So it's sometimes a hard thing to kind of get through the average listener, as to how my universe works.
Man, that's so cool, man.
But we've even ran across that problem in there's like 5 of us that we would need for us to tour with your Majestic Kingdom album.
Yeah, I think we'll get there. Yeah, for sure.
We're talking about 5 people is all you need, but
right.
We're talking that's going to be difficult for us, and I can't imagine trying to carry around a whole. Basically an orchestra with you.
A whole symphony orchestra and a full choir and, exactly. A dozen-piece rock band and gosh knows what else.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yep, you got it, man.
If you could get some financial backers to kind of put up some of the money to cover the cost, that might be plausible. And there are certainly lots of bands that do that. But I don't have a connection to a major corporation that's going to front me that kind of cash,
Right. Let me ask you, man, what kind of guitar are you rocking, dude?
Which one? There's about 20 of them sitting here next to me.
Very nice. I like it. That's a good one right there. I like it.
The one that I have been using most, it's here. I'll show you. It's kind of sitting over here to my right.
Oh, okay. Ooh, yeah.
It's Party.
I like it.
Yeah. And there's a fun story that goes along to this one. I was in a flea market, and I was walking around this flea market, and there was this old lady that had, a table full of like Hummel figures and other kind of, porcelain tchotchke crap. Nothing that I'd have any interest in, And I got to the end of her table, and there was a Fender Strat leaning up against the table. And I looked at it, and I looked at the lady, and it felt very odd for her to have this Strat. And I picked up the guitar, and I said, "Excuse me, ma'am, is this yours?" And she said, "Yeah, that belonged to my son, but he took off for college several years ago, and he hasn't been back home to play it at all, so I figured I'd see if I could get some money for it." And I said, well, what do you want for it? And the lady looks at me, and she goes, "Well, is $50 too much?" I threw the money at this lady, and I ran.
Exactly.
Wow.
Wow.
I threw the cash at her, and I just ran. And so what I did was I took the Strat, and I basically gutted it. I only kept the body and the neck, and I basically loaded it full of everything the way I want it. If you'll notice that there's no middle pickup, I hate middle pickups.
Oh, right.
No middle pickup. Humbucker in the bridge and a single coil on the neck. It's just a 3-way switch. I also really hate where the volume knob is on normal Strats. So there's no knob there, and I only have the 2 lower knobs, which is volume and overall tone. And obviously a custom pickguard, and the pickups were custom made to go with the pickguard, and then the Vine inlay.
I love that.
Yep.
Yeah, and then I'm a big fan of these GraphTech saddles and the GraphTech nut. I think they make a huge difference in string breakage. And then the tuners are locking tuners.
Oh wow!
Yep. And I have 3 or 4 more Strats that are kind of run along the same lines, where they're, you know, Strats that I've basically gutted and put all my own stuff in there. Let's see. There's a Paul Reed Smith. There's a Paul Reed Smith. That's a pretty one. And there's a Dean Vendetta 4.0 with the razor wire inlays. That's kind of yummy. You know that. And most of my guitars have Seymour Duncans in them. I'm a big fan of Seymour Duncan. You know, I tried a few guitars that had DiMarzios, but I just found the DiMarzios to be way too bright. They were just they were kind of on the shrill side, whereas I felt like the Seymour Duncans had a much kind of rounder, more versatile tone. You know, it felt like the DiMarzios were great if you were doing, you know, shred metal, but beyond that, they really were a little too crisp. And then I'm a big fan of Taylor guitars. There are literally 8 Taylor guitars sitting here to my right.
Nice. Nothing wrong with that.
Oh, Taylors.
Just 8 Taylors. Yeah.
Yeah.
No big deal, right? Everybody's got at least 3 or 4, right?
Right.
And let's see. There is a baritone guitar, a Dan Electro baritone. And let's see. There is a electric sitar.
Oh, different.
Yeah, that's kind of a crazy one. I played that on Hypatia. There's a Washburn 7-string. There is a Dean Bolka 12-string electric, which is fun if you want to get that kind of Birds, Roger McGuinn, you know, kind of thing going on, or kind of that kind of jangly Tom Petty kind of sound. And let's see what else. There's 4 or 5 violins and 3 or 4 mandolins, and I don't know. There's just a massive pile sitting over here.
Nice. Love it.
And I have to put white tags on all the cases that say what's in each case, because if I don't, like, it's just a big pile of black cases and I don't know what's in each case.
Yeah.
So I have to have tags on them so that I can find what I need quickly.
Yep. I don't blame you.
Yeah, it's and you know, guitars is kind of one of those things that you can never have too many of.
Exactly. There's nothing wrong with that.
Oh, and there's a beautiful Gibson 335 that was left in a will. My best friend left it to me in his will when he passed away.
I got you.
And so when he passed away, his son brought me this gorgeous 335, like, you know, a B.B. King style blues guitar. That's
nice.
That's been used on several Telergy recordings, and for whatever reason lately, I seem to have way too darn many ukuleles. I'm not really a ukulele aficionado, but I teach a lot of it, and subsequently they sort of arrive in my lap. So there's numerous ukuleles sitting around as well.
Yeah, that works. I hear you. I hear you, brother. All right, man. You know what? We've been talking about music, man.
Yes. So now you're going to ask me, like, what kind of, you know, underwear I wear or something important.
Not quite that.
Oh, well, you know, I'm a fruit of the loom man myself.
I got you. I got you. I was going to go the food route, but, you know.
Oh, bring it. As you can tell, I have not missed too many meals in my life.
Me too, bro.
I'm right there with you.
What's your favorites, man? Chinese food, what you got?
Well, yeah, Chinese is definitely a favorite. I am married to probably one of the greatest cooks on the planet.
Oh,
my wife is a native Filipina.
Okay, I got
and she also spent time working in Hong Kong and in Beirut, Lebanon. So she brought all of those cuisines,
Wow.
here. So when when it's dinner time here at my house, I never know what I'm going to get. It could be Filipino food. It could be Arabic, Middle Eastern food. It could be, other Asian cuisines. Just last night she made Korean. So I never know exactly what's gonna be on the table, but it's always good.
Boom. Love it.
It's always good.
8 tailors. And he feeds him well.
That's right.
Keeper, dude, you got a keeper right there.
That's it.
Well, it took me a long time to get her. She was originally working in Beirut when I met her online, and it took quite a long time to get her out of Beirut and get her back to the Philippines where I could apply for her visa to get her over here. And from the time that we met online to the time she actually arrived on American shore was 3 years.
I got you.
Oh, wow.
So it took 3 years to get her here, but it was well worth it because she's a wonderful woman, and I am very blessed to have her.
Oh, that's awesome, man. See, I love to hear. I really do love to hear that stuff for real, though. Yeah.
Yeah, and that could be such a great story in and of itself.
It's true.
Oh yeah, it is quite the story with a lot of drama involved. It certainly wasn't an easy task. Dealing with all of the different government paperwork and stuff is very challenging and expensive.
Right.
But it's been an incredible joy, having her here and as part of my life. And the greatest thing about her is, for her coming here, it's a very new culture. And every single day with her, everything to her is brand new. Her first trip to Walmart was a mind.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. We walked into Walmart and she just was like, "What? Wow!" Like,
Walmart. Yeah.
Well, you got to realize, she is from a very, very poor Asian country, and she basically grew up in kind of like, straw hut in a mud field kind of condition.
Right.
And she gets over here to America, and it's just like, wow. And when she got here, I actually, when she flew in, she actually flew into JFK in New York City. And the very first place I took her was Times Square.
Yeah.
So it was basically like, here's America.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's had a big culture adjustment to go from, where she came from to America. But, as long as I keep the Lindt chocolate flowing, she's okay.
That's good stuff right there. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, she always tells me, when I first met her online, she was living in Beirut, and I sent her a care package, and in that care package, I put a bunch of Lindt chocolate. And chocolate in other parts of the world is kind of hard to come by sometimes. And so when she got this care package, and she always likes to tell me, she's like, I was eating that chocolate, and I said, "Yep, this is the guy I'm going to marry and spend the rest of my life with." Yep.
Nice.
Oh,
Nice.
that's awesome.
Yeah, that is cool, man. That's really cool. And she likes good music. That's what's cool. You guys are on the same page with everything.
Oh, absolutely. She had never been to a concert in her life before she got over here.
Right.
And so she had, this is a completely new experience for her. And music, she's always been a big fan of music and enjoyed music, but never got to have that live experience. And I remember it was only, I think, a week after she got here that I took her to see Whitesnake and Foreigner. And we had backstage pass. So she hasn't even been in America a week, and she's hanging out backstage with Whitesnake.
Yep, that's awesome.
You know, I mean, it's really been a mind blower for her to have that experience. And you know, as a husband, you sometimes have to suck it up and do what's right so that you can make your wife happy. So, you know, just before the pandemic hit and there were still concerts happening, I had to suck it up and be a good husband and take my wife to one of her favorite all-time artists that she loves so much. Air Supply.
I knew something was coming, yeah.
And I got backstage passes for Air Supply, and I got to tell you, you have never seen a woman so excited in your life. I mean, and the tickets we got were right on the aisle in the center. They were about, I don't know, 8 or 10 rows back from the stage. Well, 2 songs into the show, she completely abandoned my worthless ass and just ran straight for the stage. And she spent the whole show just right up against the stage, just, you know, puddles of joy looking up at Air Supply. And I'm sitting back in the 8th row holding her purse like, oh, when is this going to be over? So those are the kinds of things you have to do as a husband to keep your relationship, you know. And you would not believe how huge Air Supply is in the Philippines.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you got to realize in the Philippines, their radio is heavily regulated.
I got it.
So any act that in any way uses foul language or has sexual innuendo or anything of that nature, they will not allow that. So pretty much when you go to the Philippines, all you hear on the radio is really sappy love songs.
I got you.
And that has become sort of culturally what everybody knows and likes because that's what's on the radio.
Right.
So, you know, and the sappier, the better.
Right.
And so like Air Supply is like one of the biggest bands there is over there.
Wow.
So and you know she got to see him and she got to hang out with him and have a picture with him and I did my husbandly duty.
Hey, you know what? That works, man. And
just a few months before that, I took her to meet King Diamond. So
bam. Yeah.
I'm covering all the bases. And you got to say there's not a funnier picture in the world than my little Asian wife backstage arm in arm with King Diamond.
I hear you.
Well, you know, right before the pandemic hit last year, my wife loves the Jonas Brothers. I mean, she's like...
I'm sorry.
I know.
I'm sorry.
So I told her, yeah, for your birthday, you could go to their concert. We'll get a ticket. I didn't know they was like $250 a ticket. And then she went and like bought her friend a ticket to go with her on my card. And I'm like, why didn't you tell me about that? And so now she spent like $500.
Man.
And I'm like, you know what? I can't afford to go with you.
Right.
And then I couldn't find her a ride, like, to get her up to the concert and back because I had to work that day. And so, like, I had to take a day off work to take her up there. So, when you pay $500 for tickets and then a day's work missed, you know, I mean, that was like...
For a concert you don't get to see.
Yeah.
Well, then again, it's not a bad thing missing that.
I mean, it was like $1,000 for her to go to that concert.
Yeah.
For me.
But that will be something that she remembers forever, and she will love you eternally for the sacrifice you made for her.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of her best memories, so it was worth it.
Yeah. Well, just like the Air Supply thing for my wife, you know.
Right.
You know, and you know, it's funny. So many of these artists that I work with, and so many of these artists that my wife subsequently gets to meet,
Mhm.
she really doesn't know who
Right.
these people are because they're not popular from her country where she's from. So, you know, like I said, when I took her to see King Diamond, she had no idea who King Diamond was.
Right.
And all I could tell her was, well, he's a heavy metal singer. You know, that was like the best I could give to her, you know. And you know, we got to the concert pretty early, and we got, you know, these, you know, an incredible spot, you know, on the floor where we had a great view and everything. And, you know, the lights go down and the show starts and all hell breaks loose. And, you know, the band is just slamming and King Diamond is doing what King Diamond does. And after the very first song, my wife turns to me and she goes, "I love heavy metal." Like,
nice.
right on, baby.
That must have felt great right there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep. So I've exposed her to, you know, all kinds of things, you know,
Yep.
and you know, some things she knows a little. Like with Kansas, she knew "Dust in the Wind"
Mm-hmm.
because that was played on the radio in the Philippines, but she didn't really know any of the rest of their catalog, and now she's familiar with it. So when they come out and do certain songs, she's like, "Oh, I love this song," you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been great sharing such a big part of my life with her and kind of showing her what my world is all about, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It's great that, you know, I have sort of this person who hasn't been, you know, already hasn't formed a huge opinion based on American culture. You know, she's coming from a completely different culture and has a completely different viewpoint on things.
Mm-hmm. Right. Man, Brother Robert, man, thank you so much for talking.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Seriously,
Absolutely.
man, I really mean that. Like, taking the time to talk to us, man, and being on here, man. It's truly an honor. I really mean that. You know.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, my brother. I mean, for real, man. Thank you, man.
My
Truly.
pleasure.
And once again, you really inspired me. I want to do something like that myself now. So
Well, when you go to do it, I want to hear it.
Sweet.
I will make sure you do.
Sweet.
Send me a copy,
Okay.
because then I'll have to know how much I have to worry.
I don't think you got a lot of competition.
Oh man, I hear you.
But yeah, so thank you for talking to us today.
Yeah, truly.
My
man.
pleasure. My pleasure. Keep rocking on, guys.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you for being with us, my friend. Have a great one, my friend.
You too.
Thank you, brother. Take care, man.
Bye.
The Henry-Kern Show would like to thank our friends. Kruse Effects. Slip Trick Records. Pick World Guitar Picks. And of course, Nebulous Music Studios in Royston, Georgia.